I'm happy on the one hand that they found some of these old merchandise and they're offering them to us, the fans. But on the other hand, I'm not entirely happy with how much shipping I paid for that. You know, so look at that. Coming to Save the World on one side and Back Off Man on the other. That's 2 vintage Ghostbusters bumper stickers down. And now I just have to source some of the other ones that I saw in this video a couple of years ago. Glad I got them for the price I did, because I've been looking at auctions for these where they're about 3 times what GB fans. But still, the shipping just always seems to be higher than what other places would charge. Now, this next pet peeve is going to come off sounding a bit puerile, but I don't care. In the book Ghostbusters Ultimate Visual History by my longtime correspondent Dan Wallace, we get this lovely picture on page 220 of Mythbuster host Adam Savage. And that actually appears just a couple of pages ahead of his name and my name, just a couple of lines apart from each other in the thanks to. If you have the book, check that out. Why does the Adam Savage thing bother me? Well, I'll tell you why. I like Adam Savage. I love Mythbusters. And I had accepted as very, intelligent, well-thought, scientific analysis so many things. And then suddenly I see his Ghostbusters costume and I'm like, whoa, 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 you're in my wheelhouse now. And that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. And I'm not the only fan that was bothered by this. I found a video by South Coast Detecting in the UK, and they had actually cataloged a lot of the different problems with his costume as shown off in his original video. Yes, I know, I hate prop snobbery, but you've made a career of making props for movies and showing people props that you want to be as authentic as possible. You ever seen his TED Talk about the Maltese Falcon? Wow, to then look at his Ghostbusters and he's just letting stuff slide left and right. It made me question everything else he had ever told me. And that was, it was like a disconnect in my brain. I had a real difficulty with it. And you know what? Maybe they shouldn't have gotten rid of Tori, Grant, and Carrie, because Grant Imahara's Ghostbusters costume looked a lot better in 2011. Maybe they shouldn't have let those guys go in August of 2014 before Adam shows off his Ghostbusters costume in October of 2014. Speaking of Mythbusters, that makes me think of that ERB, Epic Rap Battles video with the Ghostbusters versus the Mythbusters. 2 things that I love. 3 things. I love Epic Rap Battles. And I should have loved the end result of that video, but it just, I don't know. There were things about it that annoyed me, especially that Stay Puft costume. I mean, oh wow, you watch the behind the scenes and they are so proud of that thing when it arrives. And they are so proud of the professional mascot that they hired to wear it and dance inside of it. And I don't know, it's like it was a big hollow Stay Puft. And when the guy would move inside, it would collapse in weird ways. I don't know, I felt like the end result looked like a hand puppet and probably could have been achieved a lot cheaper with a hand puppet if you went to a smaller scale. Because, I mean, you're shooting everything on green screen. Go with a hand puppet. You would have saved some money and probably would have had a better overall look to it. I don't know. That's just me. But hey, if I wasn't nitpicking, you guys wouldn't be watching this. I've made lots and lots of videos that haven't been nearly as popular as this video series. So if you guys are wondering why I'm negative, it's because you're watching me be negative. Hey, I bet you can't guess what I'm going to talk about next. So I had someone comment, and I've forgotten who, and I apologize for not crediting people. They wanted to talk about Lewis firing the proton gun left-handed in Ghostbusters 2. Now, my personal proton pack was mainly patterned after GB1, and I sort of looked at individual scenes of the movie to decide the details that went on the pack. This resistor is visible on Ray's pack, and this detail is, Spengler's pack, and what have you. And along the way of making those decisions on each little detail, I had to decide which switches were going to do what. My pack is actually accurate to the film in that the barrel can rotate there. The forward grip can rotate, although I generally keep this screw in place so that doesn't happen. I do not think that the rotation of the grip is what causes the barrel to extend, and I'll tell you why. Because in the shot where Ray's does that, nobody else is doing it. Everybody else is apparently flipping this switch. You can see Ray, when he gets off the elevator, flip this switch to extend the barrel. And the reason I didn't go with a spring-loaded switch for my pack was because of one shot from the behind-the-scenes featurette when you see it extend slowly. So that's not a spring mechanism in those, to my way of thinking. So this switch here that says activate, well, I made that activate all the lights. And this switch here turns on the sound effect normally of the proton pack startup and a light in there inside the vent that is sort of flickering at me. I'm gonna have to tear this thing apart and look at it. But my pack got damaged in the Ectomobile wreck in 2015, and so a couple of these switches need to be replaced. I've bought replacements. I never have torn the gun down and redid all the wiring going into the pack and back. I'll get to it eventually. So to make the sound effect, I'm gonna have to use this auxiliary switch that I put in my pack so that we could do the scene from the elevator. So to do the firing, I've got to do that, and then I put the firing button here on the intensify button. So the question was, why, when Lewis is holding the gun left-handed, is he able to fire the beam from there? Well, when I did all mine, I couldn't find a purpose for this button, and actually the top of it's broken off at the moment. That's one of the ones I need to replace. So I made it do the purge sound effect from the video game. There are people that make that be an auxiliary firing button, so I guess there's room for interpretation of all these switches because the two movies don't jibe with one another. So the what buttons do what differs from scene to scene, and the actors were not as, you know, particular about it as we were. Basically, Harold Ramis mimed that there was a switch in this area, and then I had to figure out to make the Legree turn on a rotational switch in order to duplicate what he did on set. And Rick Moranis was not, you know, caring. He just thought it'd be cool if he fired his with his hands on the opposite ends from what everybody else was doing. And it's kind of neat. When I was in college and doing the Ghostbusters role-playing game for all my buddies, I asked them, I said, who's left-handed, who's right-handed? And I had in my brain that there would be left-handed packs, because I'm left-handed. And then a couple of months back, I saw somebody on GB Fans was actually making his left-handed son a 3D printed mirror image left-handed proton pack and proton gun. I thought that was amazingly cool to see one actually, you know, in 3 dimensions after having that idea so long ago. And one of my high school buddies was born without a right hand. So I kind of designed on paper what his would look like with like a coupler there for him to socket into. So how does Lewis make it fire hitting this button here? Here's my thinking on that. Here's our possible retcon. When Lewis is running around the firehouse with a proton pack secretly trying to catch Slimer, if you look at the deleted scene, he tells Janine that his training is secret. He's not using one of the other 4 proton packs. This is a 5th proton pack that Lewis is using. And when the other 4 Ghostbusters have just had proton packs on, firing at the slime shell over the museum, Lewis shows up with a 5th proton pack when all 4 of the ones they had were apparently on a ferry heading to Liberty Island. And therein lies the rub. Perhaps it was a prototype and Egon had switches in different configurations, or maybe Lewis dropped it and broke it and he had to rewire some stuff himself. I don't know. That's just one possible interpretation of events there. I mean, the guy's pretty handy with a screwdriver. He built that shrink ray in his attic that one time, so... Oh, wait. And here, if not my biggest, is probably my oldest pet peeve of them all. The proton beams in the first movie went into the guns. And in the second movie, they come out of the guns. The reason that bothered me, it bothered me in the theater. June 16th, 1989, that became a pet peeve for me because prior to the sequel coming out, I had already observed on VHS, maybe I'd read it in a magazine article, but I don't think I bought the first Cinefex Ghostbusters article until the sequel came out, because I'm positive I bought 1 and 2 at the same time. So I couldn't have read that 1980, for Ghostbusters Cinefex article, which actually talks about this, but I had noticed it. Somebody had maybe told me about it, I don't know. But we've step framed it on VHS, and you could see the beam going into the gun when he shoots at Slimer. The orange piece is going into the gun, and that makes sense why it moves the way it does, and the blue lightning is going out from the gun. Okay, that's kind of a really neat visual. And then they're trapping the Scoleri brothers, and this thing forms a lasso around it. Hold up, wait a minute, no. The lasso wouldn't start around the ghost and then flow into the gun, so the induction aspect of the induction rifles was gone 5 years later, and that's bugged me ever since. So yeah, that's a big one for me. All right, so you've made it to the end. Congratulations. I think I did some good work here. I started off just doing talking head videos, and then I quickly decided no, I'd better show them, not tell them, and I went back and re-edited some of them and put graphics in there, and by the end of it I was actually incorporating video into my videos. So I hope you've enjoyed this series, and yeah, it's not goodbye. I'll probably film updates and addendums and PSs to some of these entries and stick them in there, so it'll swell to more than 144 entries at some point, I'm sure. But for the foreseeable future, I'm not planning on doing any more of these. And I just want to thank you guys that have watched, for all your great suggestions, for watching, for encouraging me to make more. And don't fret, I have some similar Ghostbusters ideas in mind that I'm already working on. But I am Alex Newborn. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm glad to be here with you at the end of all things.